Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
So today I'm joined with Keith and Jane Morgan from Arroyo Blanco Ranch in Texas, and they have a new live website with Hired Hand, and we're going to interview them today, talk a little bit about their breeding program, how they got started, some of their goals, and then we'll visit a little bit about their website as well. So thank you both for joining us.
Oh, we're delighted to be here. Thanks so much.
Why don't you
Morning.
start? Oh, morning. Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. I'm sure there are more unusual stories in the breed, but Keith and I are both lawyers. And I grew up in Texas, but ended up in New York practicing law. And Keith was actually my client. Go ahead, baby.
Yep. Sort of inherited me, or I inherited you, or something like that, in a new job role. But no, we met one another working together first, and then, as they say, one thing led to another, and we wound up deciding that it was easier for us to do a merger in that regard than to continue working for wages, right, Jane?
Exactly.
The rest, as they say, is history. But sort of about I guess it was 7 years ago, we started looking around for a place to retire when the two of us were finished practicing law and working. And Jane had only one condition: it had to be in Texas, hill country. And well, I guess there were more than one. You wanted live water. Didn't want to have to look at your neighbors, right? So,
that's true. After years in New York, I didn't want to have to see anybody I didn't want to have to see.
That makes sense.
So while Jane's a native Texan, I actually grew up on the East Coast and spent a little bit of time in Texas, but not much, but enough to know that I liked it a lot. And Jane was pushing on an open door, insisting we come. So she was born here, but I got here as fast as I could. And that was 7 years ago when we bought the property, which we actually call it Arroyo Blanco Ranch.
So I really messed that name up then.
No, it's very funny. There's lots of Spanish words in Texas, but they get pronounced in a lot of different ways. And that one just means White Creek Ranch, which is the name of the creek that runs through our ranch.
Well, I'm a northerner and don't have that beautiful accent, so I'll have to work on that one.
No worries. It's fun at the auctions. We usually just use our last name because nobody can quite pronounce it.
So you told us how you got to Texas, how you ended up there. Tell us a little bit about why Longhorns. What made you decide that that's what you wanted for your ranch?
Well, having grown up in Texas and went to UT for law school, it's a natural add-on for a Texas ranch in the hill country. Of course, they're just beautiful, magnificent. And I sold Keith on the idea of a couple of steers as mobile lawn art. And, unfortunately for us, we ended up in Fort Worth at the Eddie Wood sale with an empty trailer and came home with a full one. And of course, once the baby started getting born, what else can you do but just have Longhorns?
Well, that's fortunate for the Eddie Wood sale then as well.
That's probably true. But, they're also so integral to the history of Texas. Keith and I are both big history buffs and just found that the heritage and the background was irresistible.
Yeah. When we first moved down, I figured I needed to learn a bit more about Texas history and the background of my new home state. Jane just picked it up by osmosis and in her classes in school. But for me, well, I knew something about Texas history, not a lot. So I read a couple of books, and one of which was a book about the Longhorns and the history of the Longhorn. And I just found it fascinating.
By J. Frank Dobie.
By J. Frank Dobie, exactly. That's probably the closest thing to scripture that the Longhorn Breeders Association follows. But the story of the Longhorn, the resiliency of the Longhorn, the toughness of the Longhorn, the adaptation, and the beauty of those noble creatures really appealed to us. And there's just nothing that says you're in Texas like driving through the front gate and seeing a pair of beautiful Longhorns.
I would agree for sure. So besides the sale in January, tell us a little bit about how you got started. Those weren't your first ones, correct?
That is correct. Yes, as a matter of fact, out here where we are, it's a lot of fun to drive the backcountry roads. I'm sure that's the same everywhere. A little bit sort of learn from your neighbors and also just learn about your neighborhood. And I happened to be driving down a dirt road close to us, and had noticed a pasture of really beautiful Longhorns a couple of times. And one of the times happened to be driving by, and there was a guy on a tractor. And I stopped and complimented his Longhorns. His name's John Silvey of Copper Creek Ranch. And he got a very wonderful man, very knowledgeable about the breed. Very gracious, took us into the pasture, walked us around, explained the pedigrees, backgrounds, personalities. Of course, he knew every cow individually. And that was sort of our introduction. We, obviously being a couple of lawyers who'd practiced in New York, didn't know nothing about nothing. The birthing ease was particularly attractive to us. We've yet to have to pull a calf, so that's a nice thing. And John could tell that, well, we told him we were brand new. And so he handpicked for us 3 cows out of his herd that were particularly gentle and had lovely horns and lovely dispositions. And that was the start. And then I fell in love with one that he had out in his pasture named Iron Violet. She's a beautiful blue roan with black tipped horns. And she and I made a little love connection. So those were our first Longhorns.
The foundational herd, the original girls, the OG, right, Jane?
Exactly.
So then talk to me a little bit about the Eddie Wood sale. Did you research the animals? Did you know which ones you were going to bid on? Or was it kind of another connection point? When they walked into the ring, you just had to have them?
A little of both, Molly, and you never know, life's going to throw you a curveball. So of course we'd looked at the catalog. The pictures will only tell you so much. So of course we walked through the pens before the sale, and some that we had that we thought we would like didn't look quite as nice in person. And then others, like you said, when they came in the ring or you saw them in the pen, you're sort of like, ooh, love that. And then Keith, you should tell them the story of Xena.
Yeah, this, well, first of all, I'm kind of a big old softy, and, hard to imagine that with New York and lawyer involved, but, I really am at heart. And so the auctioneer brought Xena in, and Xena, beautiful, white and brown coloration, nice horns, nice, everything we liked. And he told the story of Xena. Said, well, Xena was supposed to be here with a calf by her side, but the calf was in the pens last night, and a dog or something got into the pens, and it sort of spooked the cows in the pen with Xena, and she had accidentally stomped her calf to death. And the thought of this mama, having lost her calf that way, just really touched me. Now I know, cattle are not humans, and we do tend to anthropomorphize them. But I just said, look, we got to give her a home, right? We got to bring her back. We got to give her a chance to get her self-confidence back, and get her back on the saddle. And so we got to have that cow. Bring that mama home.
So that was one of the cattle we brought home in our overly full trailer, and a trailer full of cattle owned by Ron and Lisa Bailey of F&B Land and Cattle, who have also been very lovely to us. But we ended up with 10 cows, 7 calves, and And like I said, the rest is history as they started calving out. And the joy of baby Longhorns is just, it's difficult to describe for somebody who hasn't experienced it.
So have you all made any plans to attend or view some future sales to continue adding, or do you have a plan for if you're going to go slow or keep piling them on?
Well, if y'all could send us some rain, we could make some more room for Longhorns down here. But as a matter of fact, we have de-accessioned a few. As we've gotten more experienced with it, we've sort of sharpened our vision of what we'd like for the herd. We, in particular, like a twisty horn, and aren't so much into the tip to tip or total horn metrics. So we've kind of refined the cows that we're breeding to, and we've been able to emphasize disposition. So a couple of the cows we bought were gorgeous, but they hadn't had a lot of interaction with people, and they were perfectly gentle, but they weren't take cubes from your hand gentle. And we're looking for more of a disposition forward herd plus that twisty horn. So we've sold some, we've bought some, and it's a process of learning, really. We've got our first heifers up in a sale next month, and then
this is the new Braunfels, right?
Yep. And it's exciting to take your first bred cattle to market and see how they do. I'm curious.
We also live actually very close to Red McComb's ranch. He's between Johnson City and Marble Falls, or Round Mountain, actually, which is where we live. So we try to go to all of the Red McComb sales that are held on the ranch there, and we've picked up some beautiful animals at the Red McComb sale. He's really someone that we owe a great debt of gratitude to. We personally, but collectively as breeders of Longhorns, he's done a tremendous amount to further the Longhorn breed and helping to maintain and sustain it.
For sure, definitely. So you talked a little bit about babies and you love having them around, and also feeding cubes. Is there anything else that is your favorite part now that you have them?
Yeah, just watching them grow and develop. We recently acquired our own bull, Forever So, and he is a big boy, very gentle. Again, back to that disposition forward breeding that we're hoping to do, and has a beautiful set of horns on him. So I'm super excited about the opportunity in about 274 days of seeing some of his babies hit the ground and watching them develop. One thing that I know that is a deficiency in my own education in this regard is I am not really able to predict how the horns are going to come in and out. And I'm excited to see how it goes with his babies and the cows that we have in our herd, to see, how their horns develop, whether, of course, Longhorns are notoriously unpredictable when it comes to color. So I've not decided that we should try to breed for color, although I do love me a blue roan. And Forever So is a beautiful black and white. But, learning how to predict those horns like the old time breeders can do, and have a good sense of what the cross is going to produce for you, is something that I'm looking forward to. But it's a game of years. So, tune in tomorrow. We'll see how it goes.
I think for me, Molly, one of the things that I get a charge out of is moving the herd and into the pens to work, or changing pastures. To me, it's almost a miracle that they'll go where you want them to go. But thanks to a great ranch manager who's been doing it since he was 12 years old and knows, has forgotten more about cattle than we'll probably ever know. He's been very patiently teaching us how to work them, We've read the Temple Grandin stuff, and just realizing that it's not a random process, but that they do behave in predictable ways. It has sort of been, revelation to me. And the fact that it's in an area completely foreign to anything I've done in my background is also, it makes for every day kind of a day of wonderment. But we have a creek we have to move them across, and to get them going and get that lead cow, bringing them along, then watch the herd trail along behind and into the pens, and then working them in the pens, to me is really a highlight.
Well, and there's nothing quite like bringing friends and family out and parking them safely behind a fence, and then opening up a bag of cattle cubes and watch the thundering herd, almost a stampede, come across the pasture. It's a guaranteed highlight of the trip. There's no doubt about that.
Cue the cattle.
I bet. So you talked a little bit about disposition earlier. What, besides breeding for disposition, what are some of your goals and dreams for your herd as it grows?
Sure, absolutely. Well, that twisty horn is particularly important to us. I think that it goes back to sort of the heritage and legacy of the Longhorns. Yeah. And we think that we'd like to get back to something like that without sacrificing the sweep and grandeur of a 70 or 80 inch horn. I know that there are breeders that have managed to achieve breeding for color. I'm just not sure that I've got enough years left in me to manage to do that. So we would settle for gentle cows with good personalities, easy to handle, and beautiful, twisty, sort of sweeping horns on them. And, really, there's not much more you can hope for, I think. We probably won't do a lot of showing, if nothing else, just because the grandkids don't live close enough to help us out with all that. So I think for ourselves, we would like to be kind of a boutique breeder that you could reliably count on to buy a gentle cow for first or second time owners with easy to handle characteristics. Again, that easy birthing if people want to go for that, and ones that would be gorgeous pasture art
and safe.
Yes, absolutely. Because my goodness, they know where the edges of those horns are and their tips. And fortunately, we don't have any that are tough or difficult to manage, but
not anymore.
It's important, safety first. And that, I guess that's probably why we put such an emphasis on disposition.
Yeah. Again, our ranch manager early on taught us the importance of a one strike and you're out rule when it comes to aggressive cattle, particularly with what he calls stabbers on their heads.
I love the term you used, Jane, the boutique breeder. I really like that. I think that's a great way of putting what your goals are.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, we're in Central Texas, which is gorgeous, but it is not the grasslands of Oklahoma, Kansas, or Nebraska. So we have to be extremely selective in the cattle that we retain. We just don't have the grass and other resources to support 100 or 150 head of Longhorn cattle. So as a result, and because we're not going to do a lot of campaigning of our cows, we need to focus on what we think we can do best and try to do it really, really well.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions. It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more. And now, back to the podcast.
So besides the folks that you already mentioned, is there anyone else that you want to kind of credit for helping you get started with your herd?
Sure. Uh, you know, I guess everyone has been really lovely. In particular, I believe in the importance of the maternal line in breeding. And I've been able, through some contacts and creeping around on the Horns database, to find some granddaughters and great granddaughters of Terry 489. And I bought a cow from Suzanne Torkelson. Some of the ECR cattle have been really important. I've got a couple of granddaughters out in the pasture I have high hopes for. Absolutely beautiful. They did a lot of AI, which again is something that we're probably not going to do a lot of. So we're just going to use our natural pasture breeding and see what we can do with that. Also, we took some time and visited with another breeder up outside of Dallas, James Farr. He really puts an emphasis on the natural twisty horn, has a lot of Wichita Refuge cattle in his herd. And he was terrific, very generous, had us over, took us all through the pasture, introduced us to the cattle, talked passionately about the heritage and the preservation of the Longhorn. And, we just are very grateful for everyone. They've been very generous with their time and energy and passion for the animals.
Yeah, James and Debbie are Hitch 'em Up Ranch in Terrell, Texas. A little unpaid testimonial there, but really terrific people. I got to echo what Jane had to say. Every Longhorn function, sale, auction, whatever we've been to, we have met invariably several couples or people who we thought became friends, we feel have become friends. And that community is just so generous. They're generous with their time, they're generous with their advice, they're generous with their knowledge. It's not a competitive situation. It's really more like a fraternity where everyone sort of understands we're in it together with a shared purpose and a shared love for this magnificent creature. And while there may be differences of opinion as to what you want to breed for or what you think is the best looking, version of a Longhorn, it's a vive la différence thing. The differences are welcome and understood. There's good-natured horseplay going back and forth between the two, of course. You see that everywhere, but isn't that true about anything that you feel passionate about?
Definitely. Before we kind of switch gears and talk more about the website side of things, is there anything else that either of you would like to share about your cattle specifically or your breeding program?
Well, I'll make a hopefully graceful transition and say you should check out our website. We were very fortunate to have some excellent developers work with us and highlight our cattle. And as someone who's never had a website before, I need to get better about tweaking it and working on it, but we had a lot of fun. And we think that it's a terrific opportunity to highlight those cattle and show what makes them special.
So what made you, that was a great transition, by the way. So good job.
Well, I chose Hired Hand, to be honest, because I'm a boomer and not particularly technologically competent. I'm a digital native. Our children would be, I'm a digital tourist. Our children are digital natives. And y'all made it so easy for us to tell you what our vision was and then implement it really very efficiently without a lot of drama. And I found your team was just wonderful to work with. I made a couple of mistakes in identifying the cattle. There was no exasperation or annoyance. It was just fixed instantly, immediate turnaround, really helpful suggestions when a few of things that we had thought that we wanted didn't turn out in execution quite like we had hoped. So your team came up with options gave us, different ways of looking at and solving the problem that I, because I don't have the skill set, found extremely helpful and proactive. And I got to give a shout out in particular to how easy y'all made it to tie into the database and the wealth of information that's out there if you know how to get to it, and y'all do. So you were able to populate the website with the cattle, drawing straight from the registry. And for myself, the plug and play and the ability to have someone take what I wanted, use your, again, vast experience and deep subject matter expertise in the Longhorn breed in particular was very, very helpful and gave me a feeling that it was going to be okay, because otherwise I was just flailing with the technical aspect of it, and even quite frankly, some of the aesthetic aspects of it that you guys were able to help out with.
So walk us through a little bit. So you touched on some of this, some of the parts of your vision that we were able to kind of execute for you, but just talk to us about some of the considerations or decisions that you wanted to see or that you made when your website was under development, some of the things you worked through with Angie.
Sure. Well, one in particular was we had worked with a graphic designer to help us with the logo and choosing a font and colors. And not being a graphic designer myself, I looked at it. I thought it looked terrific. Angie put together the landing page for us, and it turned out in this particular font, the W was almost obscured. It's a rustic font, and you couldn't see it. So welcome to Arroyo Blanco turned into Elcom. And I was like, well, that's just not going to work. My proposed solution as a lawyer is change the language. I was like, well, why don't we say howdy? And she's like, why don't we pick a different font? And I was like, that's probably a better solution. That's a more viable long-term way of approaching this. So, they came up with a couple of solutions, proposals for me, and we picked one, and we're just delighted with it. Another example would be on the landing page. They had proposed that the images of the main pages, the herd sires, the cows, the sale pen, would be black and white when you first came to the page, but as you navigated over to it, it came into color, which I thought was a really nice touch. It both sort of appealed to the history and legacy piece of it, but then also gave it some dynamic interest that the page changed as you interacted with it. So that was something that would never have occurred to me. It was something that they came up with all by themselves. And I was like, that's terrific. And then as we continued to tweak the site, something our graphic designer had suggested didn't quite work. And I said, can you get rid of that for me? And they did. And I was like, wow, terrific. So I think that the ability to listen to us and sort of take our suggestions and then push them a little bit, both because they're very creative and technologically competent, and because you have such tremendous experience and expertise in this area, that I was able to get a product that far exceeded my expectations, that was something that I never could have done had I tried to do it myself. Or, it also wasn't overkill. It was just Goldilocks. It was perfect. It was everything I wanted and a little bit more, but it wasn't overwhelming. And I think that's really important. And I would say, Molly, I thought it was very cost effective. Don't raise your rates now, but I thought for the value, it was a really terrific proposition for us, because it was very plug and play, cost effective. And I like the fact that you had various options of, tiering of how customized do you want it. And also, again, the ability to pull straight from the registry and past databases was terrific.
Well, I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure how to respond. I think that might be the most extensive testimonial we've ever got. So thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure. We really are delighted. I have to tell you, it was everything I had hoped for and lots more. And I am looking forward to being able to do a little tinkering with it myself. And if I mess anything up, I'm quite confident you and your team will be able to fix it for me.
For sure. Angie is great at fixing mix-ups. So you've touched on this a little bit with some of the design elements that you talked about, but how else are you trying to stand out in the breed with your website specifically? How can it relate back to some of those goals that you have for your program?
Well, I guess we tried to highlight what we were doing on the landing page, on the home page. And then, as I said, as I get more able to manipulate it and change it and tweak it, I'm looking forward to, because again, being a lawyer, it's all about the text with me. I should be more alive to the graphics and the images. But I think we're going to try to tell a little bit of a story, with each of the foundation cows and the calves that we're promoting, and try to stand out from the crowd a little bit with making it an easy entry point. Like I said, we're never going to be Red McCombs or some of the other major breeders in the industry. And so we want to appeal to people who are looking at the opportunity to have a Longhorn, but might be intimidated by their size, by their horns, as we were, the thought of trying to engage in a breeding program, and really emphasize that this is a breed that is easy for people to do on a small scale, or if you have the resources and the passion for it, to do on a really large scale basis. So I think that's how we're looking to stand out, is to make it approachable and to share the passion and enjoyment that we've had with the breed.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share about the website specifically before we follow up with our last question?
Well, I hope to get even more technologically able to spread it far and wide. I've sent it out to friends and family, and as we start getting our own calves in the field and able to attend more of the auctions, we'll do some advertising, we'll do some other promotion like that. Fortunately, as I mentioned, Keith and I do have children who are digital natives, and I'm sure that they're going to help us with that marketing. And I'm sure you guys are too. That was, I should have said, another thing that really appealed to me, Molly, about Hired Hand is how integrated you are with the auctions that you help with the website design, and just also the fact that you touch so many of our fellow breeders, and I think help with the promotion and spread of information about your clients and the breeders. So we really appreciated that, and we wanted to be on your team.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you're definitely helping by doing this interview with us. So thank you for all of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I just wanted to say that the integration of your whole approach to the breed, like I said, through the sales, through the website design, through the promotion, is exactly the kind of thing that I think we need to continue to do in the breed, to sort of raise people's awareness of it, and also to promote quality over quantity. As I said, we're kind of a boutique breeder, so that's something that I think that y'all are helping with, and we want to be part of that.
All right, so final question here. Keith, I'll put you on the spot since you haven't answered one in a few. So we ask everyone, what is your favorite website, hired hand website that's not your own?
Well, I'd have to say Red McCombs is at the top of that list for us. Again, because he's such a legend and he's kind of a neighbor since he's only a few miles away from us. And so I'd have to say that one's our favorite.
What about you?
Let me ask you a question, Molly. How long have y'all been working with them?
I was just thinking about that as Keith answered. They probably jumped on with us, I'd say our second year in business. So definitely over 10 years, if not closer to 12 or 15. So they've been great customers and great friends. And it's been awesome to get to work with them.
And see, now we've just turned the tables on her entirely. How did you get into this business, Molly? A nice girl, not from Texas.
So when I was growing up, my family had a farm in Iowa, and my dad and my grandfather decided that they wanted to do something different, and they actually got their first Longhorns when I was little, and then they got my sister and I into halter breaking and showing them. Kind of became what our family did, over the summers, and that was our vacations and, and all of that. And I really enjoyed it. I loved not only the animals and their disposition, like you said, and their personalities, but also just getting to know all the people. The maid of honor in my wedding was a friend that I made showing cattle. Just the friendships like you all have touched on. And so I stayed in touch with a lot of folks when I went off to college, and I started freelancing for some of them. And everything just kind of came to be from there. So see, now you're making me feel old though. So
oh, stand in line, girl. You got nothing on us.
So thank you both so much for joining us today. We will put all of the links to the other breeders that you mentioned, as well as your website in the show notes for folks to reference. And hopefully we'll see you down the road at a sale or possibly online.
Terrific. Well, we'll look forward to it.